welcome back to this channel of crafting, crochet and knitting. My name is Nikki and welcome to my little yarniverse. So yes, hello, welcome back if you are a returning viewer. As always, how are you guys doing? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you're making anything, do let me know what you are making at the moment, because you know I like to hear what you are up to. I am doing okay. The weather is a bit grey and wet and disgusting, and it's a little bit cold, so I think we're well and truly into winter, but other than that I am doing okay. I was planning out some videos for the rest of the year last week, and as predicted I do have some time to actually sit down and make a tutorial video. So these videos do take a little bit longer to make because, well, you have to make the item, you have to explain what you're doing, you have to edit it all together, so it is a little bit of a longer task, but I have the time to do it, so I'm super excited to get started. So today I'm going to be designing again another chemistry kit item. So this was what I made last time. This is the conical flask, and there's a tutorial on my channel, I'll link it in the description, for how to make this. The main thing I really wanted to do though was to play with shape, so how I could get this sort of cone shape going on, whether I could make a nice finish or not, whether I could close off the work so that the stuffing stayed inside and it would be washable. You can kind of see on camera that there's a bit of a lip there where I rejoined the yarn, which I'm not super happy about, and I want to try and address today in the tutorial, so we'll have to see if that works or not. So stay tuned and let's get making, this time a beaker for our chemistry kit. Okay, so we've once again got the yarn from our little origami kit. These are 25-gram balls. We have white and blue today, so I used blue to make the conical flask. I'm just going to use white and blue again for all of the tutorials because it's easy to see, and then I will make a set with some more varied colours. These are 100% cotton. They're not the softest cotton, a little bit splitty, but they will do fine for origami that just needs to be washed regularly. I have a 3mm crochet hook, I have a darning needle, and I have a little stitch marker that I will use a bit later on. So we're just going to start very similar to how we made the conical flask. We're going to make a magic loop, and then we're going to put 6 single crochets into that magic loop. So 1, so that's a single crochet in US terms, 2, 3, or a double crochet in UK terms. Okay, so that's our magic loop with 6, 2, 4, 6, yeah. So we're going to close that up. Again, people sometimes like to put their first stitch of the next round in before they close it up. It's just personal preference to close mine up first. So 2, 4, 6. So then we're going to increase in each stitch. So this is where it gets a bit difficult for me because my yarn is quite splitty. Just need to try and make sure that I'm getting the right bit. So for increase, we're going to do 2 single crochets into each stitch, and in fact that did split, so one moment. 11 and 12. So that should have been our 6 increases. I'm just going to count them to check, there's no shame in that. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, just as we expected. I'm going to tighten this up again. So usually I will actually crochet over this end and tuck it in as I go, but I haven't this time. So at each stage we're going to be increasing by 6 stitches. So in the previous round that was by doing an increase in each spot. For this round we're going from 12 stitches to 18, which means we're going to do a single crochet into the first stitch and then an increase in the next, and we're going to repeat that all the way around until we have 18. So 1 single crochet, 1 increase, or at least again it would be an increase if my yarn wasn't splitting. So yeah, that's my 3rd stitch. 1 crochet and then 1 increase, which gives me 6 stitches, 1 crochet,
increase. That gives me 9, halfway round, 1 increase, 1 single crochet, sorry, then 1 increase. That will give me 12, 1 single crochet, 1 increase. That gives me 15, 1 single crochet and 1 increase. So this should be my 18th stitch. So again, I'm going to check those as I get around. I don't like using a stitch marker at this point because it's always quite fiddly when you've only got a few rounds. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. I just prefer to count as I go and just keep checking as well at the end of the rounds. I've got the right number of stitches. I'm going to go from 18 to 24 stitches now, so we're going to do a single stitch, a second single stitch in the next, and then we're going to do our increase. Okay, so single crochet, and then increase as the pattern repeat. So one more time, I'm going to do our repeat without throwing our yarn off the table. So single, single, and then increase. So if I check this now, we should have 24 stitches. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, perfect. So this is where I'm now going to start getting the stitch marker in, because as you can probably tell from this view, we're supposed to be aiming for a circle, but we're getting a little bit of a hexagon, and that's because our increases are always happening in the same place and they're making more of a corner rather than increasing exactly in a circle. So we need to kind of break that symmetry a little bit. So we're going to essentially do a pattern repeat where we do 3 singles and then an increase, which is our next row, but we're going to break that up so that we don't get the increases in the same place. So this is where I'm going to introduce my stitch marker. I'm going to make the first single crochet there, and then I'm going to put my stitch marker in that first single crochet. Of course, if you want a hexagon, go ahead and do 3 and then an increase, and you'll get that. So that's my first stitch. We're then going to go straight into an increase. So what that's going to mean is that when we get to the end of the round, we're only going to have 2 single crochets to do. The first single crochet of the round ends up effectively acting like the third, and we've just done the increase. So now that we've just made that start, so we've made a start by doing a single crochet and an increase, we're now going to work the rest as 3 single crochets and then an increase. And we'll do that all the way around until we get to near the end. And this will just make it more of a circle, because like I say, those increases will stop lining up and stop making as much of a point as they were previously doing. So that's 3 single crochets and an increase. Three single crochets and then an increase. So already it's a lot more circular on this side compared to here where there's a point and here where there's a point. Okay, so that was just an increase. We're going to do 3 single crochet, 1, 2, 3, and then an increase. 3 more single crochet. And an increase. Okay, so now we're on our last increase. As I said earlier, you'll see there are only 2 stitches left before we hit that stitch marker. That's fine, because that means that overall we have 3 single crochets in the increase. We just broke it apart, so we've got 2 single crochets on one side, and the 3rd single crochet in the increase was on the other side of the stitch marker. And that has made a much more circular looking shape. So I think, what did we do here? We did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We did 6 rows to make the base of our conical flask. So let's do 6 rows to do that. So we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 so far. So we're just going to finish off the base of our flask. sorry, not our flask, our beaker. So we're going to do one single crochet and put our stitch marker back in. We are going to keep the pattern, but now that we've lost those pointy corners, it's a little bit harder to see where we're keeping the pattern. So just to make sure we don't lose that stitch, we can put it back in. So now we're doing 4 single crochets in total, followed by an increase. So we've just done the first one. So that's the second, third, and fourth, followed by an increase. Okay, so it's 4 single crochet followed by an increase for this final round. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you at the end of the round and we'll go from there. Okay, so I'm at the end of my round. I've just done my 4 singles. I've got 1 stitch left to do an increase. So overall we should have 36 stitches along here. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, perfect. Okay, so now that we've got the base of our beaker, we're going to want to try and start turning upwards so that we can come up the beaker. So we're going to work a straight row in the back loops only. So what that means is we're going to do 1 single crochet in every stitch, but we're going to work it into the back loop of the stitches only. So you've got these little V shapes made of a front loop, which is the closest to you, and a back loop, which is furthest away. So we're just, instead of putting our hook through both of those parts of that V stitch, we're going to put it through the back loop only and just continue as usual. Now if you want to put a stitch marker in, you can do, but you can also see the front loops are an indicator of where you began, so you can work it like that instead. I'm going to put my stitch marker back in just so that I can concentrate instead on keeping my work tipped a bit better towards the camera. So, but you can hopefully, oh, if I don't split the yarn, one moment, you can hopefully see that there's sort of a line beginning to form. That's going to make a fairly crisp edge to our beaker, and hopefully means that it should stand up okay when we continue doing this. So I'm just going to make my way all the way around, and I'll meet you back at the start of the next round. So as I'm approaching the end of my round, I've got 2 stitches left, but you can sort of see that because you can see where these front loops were, and you can see that you won't want to work into this stitch because it's already got a front loop in front of it. So that's how you'll be able to tell that you're getting to the edge of your work. So that's my second to last and my last stitch there. So hopefully that's going to make a nice flat base for our beaker. You can see it's already coming upwards. So now, before we start the next row, now is a good time to make sure that if you've got this end loose, that we are going to go ahead and weave it in place. So what you can do is just pop the stitch marker in your hook loop for now, just so you don't lose it and start frogging back your work. And get your darning needle and thread that in place. You can just pop it inside out, making it a little bit easier to see what you're working on. And weave it in place. So I'm going to go ahead and weave this in place, and I'll meet you back when we're actually starting the next round. So I've weaved in most of that end. It is now secure. So I could cut that loose, I could just leave it because it's going to have stuffing later and be closed up anyway. So I'm going to put my hook back in. So now we're going to do another straight row, but we're going to go back to going through all of the stitch. So this will be another 36 stitches. I'm going to just pop my stitch marker in again, and we're just going to do that. We're probably going to do a few rows where we're just doing a single crochet into each stitch. So I'd probably say we want at least 2 more rows, if not 3. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'll pause the video, and then when we start doing anything different, I will let you know how many I've done in the end, and then you can either decide if you want to do more or less. Of course, the amount of stitches that we do in this blue colour will be how much water there is in the beaker. I think we want enough rows though so that we can put aragami eyes in if we wish. So that's why we probably need at least 2 more, if not 3 more, in the blue. If you want to put the eyes on the white yarn that we'll use to make the rest of the beaker, then that's fine too. You may only want a very shallow bit of water in your beaker. So at this point we're just doing straight rows, so you can do that. You can do that colour balance however you wish. So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to make the rest of my water, and I'll see you in a moment. Okay, so I've actually done 5 more rounds in the blue. I just thought that I wanted to make sure I had plenty of space if I wanted to put aragami eyes, if I wanted to make a nice little cute mouth, some cheeks. So I made sure that there was a fair bit of water in this beaker. And now I'm going to change colour to the white so that we can do the rest of the glass. So I'm going to get our new colour, leave a relatively long tail. Now in the last stitch of the previous round I didn't finish the stitch, I only pulled up a loop through the stitch. Now I'm going to hook my white onto there and thread it through to finish the stitch. And this means that when I start the next row we already have white yarn. So we need to make sure that we pull that blue nice and tight. We're now going to work over the tail of the white and the end of the blue so that we can make sure that we are securing it. So really do pull that blue nice and tight before you work your first stitch. And then we're just going to continue doing our straight rows, so a single crochet into each stitch. And you can see why it's called a straight row, because it's basically just making this tube as we go in the round. If you were working a straight row in a flat piece of work, then obviously you just end up with some sort of square or rectangle. The easy thing about this round is because how we started with the white, that is our first stitch. So I could go ahead and mark it, or I could just wait till the next round. And a good measure of how much of the blue we need to leave before we cut it is about the same length of the tail of white that we have. So we're getting a good way around the work. So that's going to be securing it nicely. And I'm just going to take a pair of scissors and snip our blue off the work now. Okay. One thing that I didn't say earlier is that if you wanted a bigger base, you could use a bigger base. You just have to increase more rows in this starting circle. But the bigger you go, the more likely it is that these straight rows fall slightly, so sort of cave out a little bit. There's a couple of ways you can combat that. You can just make sure that your initial stitches in these straight rows are very tight, or at the start and at halfway points of your round you could decrease by 1. All that will do is mean that you just have slightly fewer stitches in your straight rows, and it will pull it in slightly instead of allowing it to pucker. I've actually gone for the first, which is just to make sure that my stitches are nice and tight so that it doesn't cave out slightly, but also I have a smaller circle so it's less likely to happen. It's more of an issue when you're doing something bigger like a basket. When you're doing a basket you're going to want a nice big base, and the problem with that is that then the yarn, when you start coming up to the sides of the basket, they cave out slightly. So just something to be aware of. I hope I didn't just knock my camera when I moved the table there. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this round, and then we probably want it to be about as tall as our conical flask. So I will keep track of how many rounds that is, and then I will come back and let you know how many straight rows of white you're going to need to make in order to finish your beaker before we then close the work off. So in the conical flask what we did was towards the end we closed off the work so that we could stuff it and the stuffing would stay inside. We're going to do that with the beaker as well. So I will get to near the end of the work, start to close it off. I'll show you how to close it off, and then we'll finish the top of the beaker. So I will pause the video and be back in a moment. Okay, so I have done 7, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows of white, and that goes with my blue rose there, just because that is now beginning to get to about the size of my conical flask. I think that I potentially could have made the beaker base 1 row smaller, and that might have meant the dimension of the beaker worked out a little bit better, I'm not sure. But it is what it is for now. You are obviously able to make your beaker base as big or as small as you want, and then you can make your length of your beaker as big or as small as you want. You can do the colour, so the amount of liquid in your beaker. If you don't even want it to be a beaker and you want to make this into a basket, then you can do that too. So it's just about playing with the shape. Now, this is your last chance to put a face on your beaker, because we're going to start closing up the work. So this is the start of my row, and so this needs to be the back of my work, because you can sort of see where I've been working in the round. There are ways to close that up. At the colour change, I didn't do them because I'm probably just going to turn my beaker like that, and then I will have a face on here somewhere. So if you want to do that, then you need to go ahead and do that now. So pause the video if you are going to do that. I am not going to do that on these, because these are just my templates for the tutorials. So I'm going to start working about how I'm going to close this up. In the last tutorial, I worked in the back loops only and closed up the work, and then I rejoined in the front loops and continued the top of the flask. However, I can see where I've done that, so I want to try something else this time. If you would rather do it the way that I did here, then you can follow the instructions in that tutorial, but I'm going to try to make it a little bit more seamless. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a row of half double crochet. That's a US term. In the UK it's half triple or half treble. So we're going to wrap our yarn around our hook, we're going to put it through, yarn over and pull through, and then we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3. Okay, what this does, if I just put my stitch marker in the top V shape, so in the top of our stitch, we now have a V. Behind our work, we have got, if I pull that loop a bit, we've got an extra loop. Okay, that's where we did our first yarn over. So my hope is that I will be able to work into that loop to close off the beaker, and that will mean that the front doesn't look like it has been as tampered with. So we're going to try that. So we're going to do a single row of half doubles all the way around, 1 in each stitch. So I'll pause the video and you can join me when you get to the end of your row. Okay, just doing my last half double crochet. Okay, so now we're going to leave the starting stitch, this stitch marker here for now, and we're going to work into that loop that I showed you at the back, just here. Okay, we're going to do 4 single crochet and then a decrease. So if I can catch it, 1, 2, 3. Ooh, I've got some hay in my work, there we go. 4, and then a decrease. So we're going to do a decrease by putting our hook through that loop and then through the same loop on the next stitch, pulling through our yarn. You might need to wiggle it a little bit, try not to split, and then close off that stitch. So we're going to work that all the way around, 4 single crochets. So that's 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, into those loops at the back behind the stitch, and then we're going to do our decrease, so into 1, into the second, yarn over and wiggle to pull it through, and then complete the stitch. So I'm going to do that all the way around, and I will meet you back here. Okay, so I've been around now in the backs of all of those half double crochets, making single crochets, so 4 single crochets and then a decrease. So now we're going to continue, but we can go into the full stitches once again. So make sure that we get that one. If you look what your stitch marker was in the start of the round before, you can see where we made the stitch into the back, and then it's the V-stitch above that is our first stitch. So we're going to go into there. We're now going to do 3 single crochets and then a decrease. Okay, when you've got to the end of that round, we're going to do 2 single crochets and then a decrease all the way around. Okay, and then so once you've got to the end of that round, you can probably guess the next one. The next one will be 1 single crochet and then a decrease, but first we're going to go ahead and stuff our work. So I'm just going to pull that nice and big loop for a while, just whilst I stuff the work. So now we're going to finish closing off the inside with the stuffing. I'm going to pick our loop back up again onto the hook. Make sure it's nice and tight. And now we're going to have to work with the stuffing. So it's kind of, I find the best way for me to stick my finger in the way. So remember, we're doing 1 single crochet and then a decrease. So if you wanted to check at the end of that last round, you should have 18 stitches. We're now going down to 12. So then we're just going to do 6 decreases. So this is very much the reverse of what we did to make the base. That's 1. 2, again very fiddly, so mind that stuffing. 3. 4. 5. And 6. Okay. So that's my work all closed off. What we're going to do is we're just going to slip stitch into the last, well, the first one of that last round. We're going to cut some yarn. We don't need too much. We're just going to pull that tight, and then we're going to weave it closed. I realised as I was doing this that this could make a really cute like origami soda can. So you could pick your soda of choice and use those colours and embroider on any details. So I'm just going to go through each of these front loops of those last 6 there with this yarn. Always going inside, outside in. And then make sure I get those ones too. I'm going to just pull that nice and tight. Just closes it up that one last time. I'm going to weave what's left of the end here, the rest of this yarn into bits like this. Just following where the stitches are as I do. Oh, I've dropped the end. So that when the end starts to get a lot shorter, what you can then do is just put it into the middle. So if I do one last one of those, and then go into that one. So by the time that I come out the other end, I will have dropped the yarn inside the work. And if I don't, I can just tuck it back in. Okay, so that is that finished, but now we need to go back and top our beaker off. So we're going to rejoin our yarn. Now we could go into this first stitch, but I find that that means that we close over this joint a little bit funny. So I'm actually going to look at where my previous joins are, and I'm going to start a few stitches along. So I think I'm probably going to start on the 4th stitch along. I'm going to pull up my loop, and we're going to do, well, as we do our single crochets into each of these stitches, we're going to just make sure we catch that yarn as well so that it weaves itself in as we go. So that's my first single crochet, second single crochet, and I'm going to do this all the way around. I will meet you back when I get to the join and show you how we just go over that. Okay, so as we approach the join, all we're going to do is just continue working the single crochets into it, and it will sort of force it back into being, so we're going to go through that one with our stitch marker. I'm just going to take that out. It will force it back into being not quite as disconnected as it previously was. So there's a little bit of a noticeable mark, but it's not terrible. So then that's our last one before we have to start working into here again. So that was our first stitch. I have split my yarn. So we're going to go around again with some more single crochets. So I'm going to put my stitch marker back in that one. And there should still be 36 stitches at this point. Okay, well, that's a little bit disappointing that this didn't work. So my attempt at using the half double crochet so that this didn't pull in quite so much and pucker at the edge as it sort of did with the conical flask here when I used the front and the back loop. I think the front and the back loop might look a little bit better, but I think what I've done is I've overstuffed the work, and so it's quite obvious where that lip is. So all I did was just 2 more straight rows at the top there. So now I'm going to finish it off anyway. So I'm going to do the crab stitch around, or the reverse single crochet around the top of the flask like I did for this one, to give it that sort of thicker lip that the glassware in a chemistry set has. So let's go ahead and do that just to finish the work off. So I'm just going to show you the last few stitches that I'm doing here with the reverse single crochet. So I'm going this way into the previous stitch, pulling my loop up and coming through. So into the previous stitch, pulling up a loop and coming through. So that's the reverse single crochet that I'm doing, and like I said, I'm just doing that to make a thicker lip around the around the beaker, sorry. There's not really an easy way to sort of do the final one, so we'll just leave that up to tidying up when we leave the end in. Make sure that we wrap this around a few times and hide it. So okay, yeah, it didn't go so well at the end there. So let's just tidy this up. Okay, so that's my attempt at a beaker with a closed end. I'm not going to lie, I think overstuffing it has proven to be an issue, and there's a sort of a dimple where I've picked the yarn back up.
So I'm not sure how I would combat. So I might have to experiment more with that one, I'm afraid. So well, there we have it, our beaker. So didn't turn out the way I had hoped. It was going relatively well. Accidentally made a soda can. It turns out that when you do the line of half double crochet along there, if you don't rejoin your yarn, it kind of makes a really nice lip to the soda can. So that was interesting. So if you are more into your sodas and you want to make some like cute aragorimi soda cans, then pick your favorite soda flavor and pick the right colors and do that. Unfortunately, it did not have the desired effect of removing the sort of the obvious rejoin. So I had that problem in the conical flask, sort of the rejoin is a bit obvious and I didn't like that. So I'm still going to have to work on that one, I think, but we gave it a try anyway. It looked a lot worse than it did. I think that overstuffing it was also a problem. So I did what you probably shouldn't do, and I put my crochet hook into a stitch and just pulled out stuffing. Not good. I could have made a hole. I won't recommend that. But it did prove to me that overstuffing was a problem, and I sort of also tried to pull this, stretch this out a little bit, sort of pull it more upwards. So yeah, I don't know what the solution to that could be. We'll have to have another play around with it before I make my next tutorial, because I really want to make this kit so that it is machine washable and so that the stuffing just doesn't come out. So I'll have to have another go at that. But that is the beaker. Of course, if you wanted to make this, you could put little aragorimi eyes on there. So yes, the next one I will probably attempt to create will be just a normal flask, so the ones that are the spherical shape. So we'll see how that goes. Like I say, the main thing I need to do is work on this lip. And yeah, well, at least hopefully you have enjoyed this. Maybe you could experiment with it too. If you find a solution, do let me know. Yeah, and I can't wait to hear about your own creations. I can't wait to get on and make my own with like lots of different bright colours instead of just water. So yeah, and I do intend to put eyes and a face on to my more colourful versions, so I will show you when I make those. But other than that, I hope you have a nice week. Pretty sure that the next videos are going to be Christmassy ones, so I'm pretty excited for that too. Stay tuned to see what we have got planned for Christmas this year. And with that, I'll see you in another video. Bye! Well, you didn't have to be a psychologist to realise that I wasn't feeling that one, did you? So, those of you who know me, who have been watching this channel for a while, know that if I am prepared to frog back a jumper 4 times because it's not right, I certainly can frog back a few rows of a crochet beaker. So yeah, that's what I did. I unpicked all the sewing. I frogged it back a few rows, so I basically took it back to just before I did the half double crochet row. So took it that far back. And the aim of doing it this way was to try and do it essentially in one piece. So I didn't want to have to make a separate circle and sew it down. But when I frogged it back, I just thought, I don't like the beaker as it is. So at least for now, it can't be worse. If I make a crochet circle the same size as the base and I sew it down. So that is what I did, and you can see that it's a lot better, isn't it? Let's be honest, it's miles better than the previous attempt. So that's what I did. So I sewed it down about there. So you can see the 6 rows, same size as the base, so 36 stitches. I didn't sew it down particularly, neatly or anything. I just sewed it, let's see, 1, 2, 3 rows back. And then I did the crab stitch again around the rim. And it definitely is a lot better. So although now that it is better and I stand it next to the conical flask, I realised that I made this way too big, or I made the conical flask way too small. So I will have to do some resizing, but in terms of working out the shape that I needed, this is definitely better. So I wonder if it's worth doing that anyway for my next projects, whether it's worth making those separate discs that get sewn in. It's just that the smaller the tube, the harder it is to make a disc and sew it in. It can be very fiddly by comparison, whereas this wasn't nearly as fiddly, I didn't want to do it. So we'll have to see. What do you think? Do you think that doing it in one piece looks okay on the conical flask and it was just the beaker that it looked awful on? Do you think actually, no, I do need to go back to the conical flask and do it again using a disc? Let me know in the comments. Sorry that this video was a bit long, and sorry as well, in some of the clips there was a bit of an editing issue and one of them got cut short, but I was just bagging on this, so you didn't miss much. So yeah, let me know what you think, because it bothered me when it didn't come out right, you know, and it looks miles better now. So I'm a bit happier, but I'm still a bit bothered that, you know, in terms of my video content, I only have a recording of me doing the one that didn't work. So I have to just keep an eye on that, really. So I mean, at least I have this now, and I can go about finishing the editing for this video and just put this clip at the end here. So I won't talk for too much longer. I hope you have an excellent week, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.